Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick, and this is MSFS Flight Plans, a place where my only mission is to give you one more reason to get up in the air again by trying to find the coolest looking places in the world to fly over. And then I take a few days before each flight to try to learn as much as I can about what we'll be seeing on the ground to try to make it all the more interesting as we do it. This is going to be another short hop flight today, about 84 miles in the air in total, and we're taking it one because I want to take this plane for a spin, which is the new Rockwell OV-10 Bronco, the first foray into plane design by a dev named Ari Baba. I think that's how you say that. And also, it's available for free at flightsim.to, and I'll include a link to that in the video description if you want to fly it yourself. And it's a pretty cool plane. That's not going to be a full-blown review of it. There's plenty of places that'll do things like that, but I'll tell you a little bit about it as we're flying it. This is probably the third time I've had it up in the air. So let's go ahead and get in and get started. As you can see, just a couple quick things I noticed. I have a feeling they'll probably do some updates. This is just the freshest release, but one of the things that caught my eye is this phantom vent of some kind up there. That can't be a reflection because I don't see anything else like that. Surely it's not reflecting that thing. And the other thing I noticed is that some of the levers move the opposite direction of the movement you take with your peripherals. So if I want to start this engine, I have to pull down, and you can see it goes up. Same thing with this one over here. We'll get them both started. And the only other thing that I really noticed that seems off is that once these engines start spinning, the little nose cone doesn't spin. It's just the props, but we're not going to be looking at those very much, so we probably won't see it. The main reason I want to take this flight is because, in this plane, is because you can see it has a great field of view. I mean, it's just enormous, and the sidewalls are really low, so it should be pretty cool for what we're doing. And as you probably saw in the description, we are out in Yosemite National Park today, and once we get going, I'll tell you how I wound up out here. It was quite by accident, as usual. And okay, I think we're good to go. So let's see here. We'll go ahead and give it one notch of flaps before I forget to do that. Take the parking brake off. And this thing will cook even at idle throttle while you're on the ground, so be mindful of that. You're going to have to kind of ride the brakes a little bit with it. You want to give it a spin. Let me just get turned around. I left the live weather on because you can see it's not a cloud in the sky. It's a beautiful day. There's just a little bit of wind, so I think it'll be a pretty smooth flight. Over the mountains, of course, we'll probably get a little bit of turbulence because that's what happens. But other than that, I think it'll be good. I've got the time of day set at 5 p.m., so we'll definitely be in before sunset because I think this whole flight's probably going to be less than half an hour. So it should look pretty neat. So the place we're leaving from is Mariposa Yosemite Airport, Kilo Mike Papa, India, which does not have an add-on. This one doesn't, but there was one available for the place that we're landing at, which is Lee Vining, Oscar 24. And I've got that included on this flight, so I'll put the add-on for that in. And the reason why we're out here is because I was going to take a flight out in Monument Valley in northern Arizona, because there's a freeware add-on available for that, and if you've flown out there before, you know the default scenery for that does not look great. So, as I was looking for that, I looked down and noticed there was an add-on for Monument Valley, or Yosemite Valley, which is where we are now. And I thought, you know, I bet a lot of people have been out to Monument before. So we'll check out Yosemite, probably not quite as popular. And I'd flown out here for a bush trip at some point, and I don't know if it was an in-sim bush trip or one that I downloaded from somewhere, but I figured we'd check it out again because the default scenery didn't look much better than regular default scenery, and if you've flown out here before, you know they've got all kinds of cool rock formations down in the valley, and the thumbnails looked really good. So this will be our first flight with the add-on on, so we'll be checking that out together. And we are going to have to climb like crazy once we get up. And even though I don't see an autopilot in here anywhere, my autopilot hardware is working properly, so we'll fly with autopilot on. Fly back a little bit. All right, gears up. Flaps up. And I'm going to start this climb. This plane can move. It's got these two turbo props on it, so I'm going to climb at 1,600 feet a minute because we will need to do that to get over these mountains here. And if you're not sure where in the world we are, of course, at the end I'll show you where we are on the satellite map. But we're about 100 miles directly east of San Francisco, along the foothills of the Sierra Nevada range, which is what's over there to our right. We'll be flying over those, landing over the initial crests of those guys. And this area was named after the town of Mariposa, which is about 3 miles southeast of the airport, and you'd see it off to your right. We'll catch a glimpse of it from a distance, but if you want to check that out, you can head in the other direction. And if you want to take this exact flight plan, as always, I will have it included in the video description. You can take it right from there, load it into a little NavMap, and then pull it into the sim. And if you don't know how to do that, I have a very brief tutorial video somewhere down in our video archives of how to do that. And as you can see out here, for some reason the landscape is a little bit brown, and that'll change back to green, and it may actually be natural. They've had a lot of forest fires out here, so we'll just say that's what's going on. But the default scenery, once you get up in the mountains with the snow and everything, looks really good. It did not look great over the valley, but I think that's what's going to be fixed by this add-on, so we'll take a look at that once we get out there. And I'm climbing all the way to 12,500 feet because that's where we're going to need to be. A little bit blotchy down there in that green area to get over the highest parts of the mountains. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of zigzag back and forth over Yosemite Valley, because I think that's the best way to see everything. If we just fly straight through it, we won't see everything right underneath us, so I think this will probably be a pretty good flight plan for what we're trying to do. So this area was originally the home of the Southern Sierra Miwok people. No relation, I don't think, to the Ewok people. And European Americans started heading out this way during the gold rush of the mid-1800s. All over this place is where they came. And the first miners out here, so I read, like to do it the old-fashioned way, where they just come out here with their little bucket and their panning bowl and collect what's called placer gold. I didn't know what that was until I started reading about the history of the area. But that's the kind that you just find, I guess, sitting on the surface in stream beds and things like that. But within about 2 years, they'd already found everything that was the easy pickings out here. So they set up a huge facility to crush and process gold ore using a 40-foot tall water wheel. And once that got going, the town became more industrialized as all the people who had dried up all the claims out here where all the easy stuff to grab was. Everybody moved down there, and that's what became the town of Mariposa, which is right down there to the right. So that's Mariposa down there. And there's not much else out here. If you head back behind us, of course, you get down into the cities along the coast of California, but out here there is not much at all. So say goodbye to the last bit of civilization, because that's about all we're going to see for the rest of this flight. And today the town of Mariposa is nearly bursting at the seams with a population of around 1,500 as of 2020. And it is a neat looking little place if you want to fly over that direction. Nothing spectacular, but it's a neat little town. So of course we are heading into Yosemite National Park, encompassing nearly 1,200 square miles, designated as a national park in 1890, and becoming a World Heritage Site in 1984. And of course it's most renowned for its stunning geological formations, namely the insanely steep granite cliffs that we're going to see, which formed about 10 million years ago. And the valley over which we find all that stuff is Yosemite Valley, and was created in part by glaciers and glacial runoff from ice packs in the mountains to the east, which we'll fly over right before landing. But all the glaciers that used to be up there melted off about 1 million years ago. That looks nice down there. And when the sun was a little higher in the sky, on one of these hills there's a big antenna array. It might have been this one over here. Can't really see them with the sun lower in the sky though, so that was kind of a neat feature. And you can see the trees have all gone back to their natural color. Holy smokes, that sun's bright. Well, the reflection in the mirrors works in here. So the name Yosemite is derived from the Miwok word Yohimeti, which means they are killers, which is a term they used to describe the Awanichi tribes that used to inhabit the valley. And the Awanichi population was estimated to be about 300,000 before the 49ers rolled into the valley. And they said perhaps as many as 90,000 of those guys came out here, the miners. But unfortunately, since the Indians weren't nearly as interested in gold as they should have been, the Mariposa War kicked off in 1850 to kill or depose anyone who didn't like being deposed. And just 10 years later, only about 50,000 indigenous people remained out here. But we did get some gold and a national park out of the carnage, so I think we could probably all agree that that was well worth 250,000 lives to nab that. And then in 1969, the handful of tribal remnants that were still out here were evicted from their village by the National Park Service. This is 1969. And the Park Service burnt all of their dwellings to the ground as part of a firefighting exercise. Again, totally worth it, right? So what we should be able to see up here are some very impressive and impressively detailed cliffs, peaks, outcroppings. And the streams already look pretty good, so those should be some nice eye candy too. Down in the bottom of most of the valleys, there's some little streams running through there. The biggest one is in the middle of Yosemite Valley, which is what we're going to be checking out. And we're almost at our altitude. But that looks nice, doesn't it? And I'm going to bet, I can't imagine how difficult it is to do modifications to stuff like crooked, jagged granite outcroppings. But the thumbnails did look good, and it was mostly just kind of flat. You could tell that, you know, where texture should be from the photogrammetry when they made this stuff, the default stuff. But I'm going to be willing to bet that it looks quite a bit better than that now. Alright, can we spot any streams yet? I think that shadow may be obscuring them, which may be okay, because you know how streams going down mountains usually look. Let me give it a little more throttle, get right up to the bottom of that blue zone there. And this little thing flying around all over the place here is our attitude indicator. And once we start hitting some of this mountain turbulence, it'll really start going berserk. Alright, so we'll level off at 12. I need to get to 12.5 right before we get to the last peaks, because that's the very highest part. So getting up over those first mountains, if you're taking a plane that can't climb like this thing, you may want to redraw the flight plan a little bit, because it's going to be real tough to gain the altitude that you need, or maybe just circle around once the other direction, then kick the autopilot on. Look at the view from this thing. Wonderful. Alright, so I can already tell that detailing is going to look pretty good. And we'll get a real nice close-up look at that. And I've really been thinking about trying to get some helicopter peripheries lately. You know, like the collective and the stick and all that. But I've tried flying it with the wheel or the yoke. And it is very difficult, as you guys know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But that stuff is expensive for the helicopters. Probably because the demand isn't nearly as high as it is for the Alpha and the Bravo, which is what I have now. And if anyone's tried the rudder pedals by those guys, let me know what you think. I've kind of seen mixed reviews. I just have the Logitech ones now, which have worked fine for everything I've wanted to do, but why not get the peak of finesse with those things? Some of the reviews I said they're a bit bulky. I said they're a bit bulky. Alright, so that big thing sticking out down there is El Capitan, which apparently is a big, big destination for rock climbers. And this edge right here is called the nose, and apparently that's the hardest part to climb, right up this ledge right here. And that's 3,000 feet straight up of granite there. And there's the stream that's running down through there. And as I got into looking at that, I started learning a little bit about rock climbing, which I know nothing about because I've never done it, nor, frankly, do I have much interest in doing it. Oh my gosh, look at the detailing over here. Wow. And they said there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can do it the sissy way, which is using ropes and harnesses and all that kind of stuff to make your way up. Or you can do what's called free climbing, which is a little bit less hardware. Or free solo climbing, which is nothing, except that little bag of chalk powder that hang from their waist. And the first person that managed a free solo climb didn't do it until 2017. I think it took like 3.5, 4 hours for him to get up there. And I think they actually made a documentary about that. I think it's called Free Solo, as a matter of fact. So you want to check that out if you can find it. And when you put this add-on pack in and then look at the sim map, you'll see all of the modified landmarks. The vast majority of them were mountain peaks around here, which I'm glad to hear because that's pretty much all there is to see, and a lot of them just look smooth and rounded out like that one looks very nice. It's very pointy now. I think that's called Half Dome. I'm going to lean out the window so we can see El Capitan here. Look at the detailing. Yeah, you can see right along this fringe here, kind of the border of where they stopped the mods, but the detailing of that looks phenomenal, way better than it did before. All of these jagged edges look really nice. That looks good. And supposedly there's even some black bears that we may be able to spot, so I drew the flight plan over near where they should be. So if you take the flight, I'll point that out from here in the cockpit once we get over it. Look at this stuff down here. That is spectacular. Aren't many places there's other places in the world that have outcroppings like this, but I don't recall any that look that good. If you look real close, you can kind of see some geometric shaping here. And if we're a little bit higher, you probably wouldn't notice it at all, but that looks cool. Really cool. Alright, so we're going to zag over one more time, and then we'll come up on a nice flat area in the mountains where there's going to be a big meadow. We'll check that out. Alright, I'm going to bring the throttle right up to the bottom of that blue zone there. We do have our flaps up, right? Yep. I'm notorious for leaving flaps down one notch. Alright, here we go. Let's see how this side looks. Boy, that's incredible. That looks really good. And as usual, I found out about this plane on John Beckett's channel. That guy's just amazing. He's really a one-stop shop for simming. I'm sure I'm not telling any of you guys that are into simming anything you don't know. So I was trying to think the other day of like the top, if I just had to pick 4 sim channels where I could get plane tutorials, reviews, updates, and some more complex flight tutorials, I think, and you guys add to this list if you'd like, because you never know what you're missing until someone points it out to you. But obviously Beckett's channel, I love AvAngel just because she's funny to me and she does good reviews. She's usually pretty close to around the launch date for stuff. And then for the sim updates, I like Overkill Simulations. That's pretty good. He's got some pretty good in-depth tutorials as well. And then, of course, for all my airliners, I always do 737 NG Driver, who I don't think drives 737s anymore. I think he went to Airbuses. So those 4 are my top 4. I've had a few others that have kind of come and gone over the years, but those 4, I think I cover all my bases. Let me know if I'm missing anyone. I always want to give those guys a shout-out. And it's funny to me that there seems to be some kind of unwritten code that I've noticed after watching, I don't know how many thousands of hours of YouTube videos, where other sim creators don't ever mention other sim creators, which is too bad. And I don't know, maybe some of those guys rely on the income from it and they're worried about competition or something, but I think this community is tight-knit enough that we can all help each other out. So when I find someone that's done a good job with something, I want to be sure to mention it. Now look at this little thing down here, this little river running through here. That's neat. I wonder how true to life that is. It looks a little bit wide for something that would run down a rocky channel like that. But I don't know, I've never been out here before. But look at these mountains up here. All of them look great, and the peaks look like they're supposed to. You know, I've been griping about the Alps a lot lately with their rounded off tops and their weird stretched sides. We're not seeing any of that out here. None at all. Look at these over here, they're all pointed. Looks great. Alright, I'm going to come up to 12,500 real quick, just because I don't want to forget to do that and then slam into that last mountain we got to come around. So this big thing up here, which we're going to kind of cut this way so it'll be out to our left, is a big area of meadows that's called Tuolumne Meadows. Tuolumne Meadows. And it's got like a silent N at the end. I had to look up the pronunciation of that. Thankfully, there's plenty of YouTube channels that'll help me with that too. And that place looks absolutely breathtaking from the ground. I think it's this region here. I don't know if it stretches down in here, but maybe it does. And from the air, I'm guessing it's a little bit more treed over than it actually is in real life, because from the ground, which looks spectacular, you should check out some pictures of that place. It didn't look like there was many trees, mostly like moss and little boulders and streams and stuff. Looked beautiful. And apparently they have some really impressive wildflower blooms in late summer, or late spring, early summer, which I'm sure would just look amazing. Yep, this looks like some really nice mountainous terrain out here. Real nice. And it's funny because once we come over these things, it's just going to open up into a desert. And if you saw our first dune flight, you know that phenomenon is called a rain shadow, because as the weather is moving from west to east, and the clouds have to try to get over these mountains, they get too cool and dump all their water out, making everything on the other side of the weather, which would be this over here, typically very dry. And that would be the rain shadow region over there, and as you're going to see in a minute, it is extremely dry. So that's the meadow there. Okay, so the bears should be, there's a little lake down in here and a little open area of snow here. This is just from what I gathered from the satellite map, which of course we will take a look at the end. And if the bears are down here, that's where they should be. And then once we come over these mountains, I got to come down really fast. We got to get back down to about 8,000 feet. The runway's at 6,700. But of course I have to have time to flatten out and slow down to get the gears and the flaps out. So as soon as we come over them, we're going to start coming down. Alright, let's see if we can spot any bears out here. So there's the lake over there. Look at these mountains. See, now they're getting a little more default. This is what they typically look like. I would bet those are much more jagged and pointed in real life. But back behind us, they looked amazing. Alright, bears, where are you at? Oh, it's going to be a little bit shadowy now. Maybe I should have left that sun higher. Let's see. I don't see any running around down there, but maybe you need to be closer. If you guys take your bush planes out here, fly down there, let me know if you spot any. Okay, we're not going to hit that mountain. I thought we were going to last time, but we're high enough. We'll just barely clear it. And then I'm just going to cut the throttles, pull our prop RPM way back, and then we're going to start coasting down. That looks amazing. Really, really beautiful. That is some nice mountain scenery right there. And that is all default, I believe. I don't think they were modifying out here. So right up ahead of us is June Mountain Ski Area. That's what this is right here. And there's another much bigger one that we won't be able to see that's down in this region too. I didn't catch the name of that one. Alright, get ready for a very dangerously close flyby of this mountaintop here. Look how dry all this is on this side. Isn't that crazy? And I think I may have even landed at this airport when I was doing my bush trip, because there isn't much else out here. And there are a couple of hangars that you can drive up into if you want. This plane won't fit into them, and believe me, I tried. But you can do that if you want to. Alright, let's get the... We're going to come down at 1,500 feet a minute. Let's pull all the props all the way back. Just start coasting down. Look at that. Beautiful. So that's called Lake Mono, and much like the Great Salt Lake in Utah, it's what's called a terminal body of water, which means there are no outflows from it, just stuff flowing into it. And if you're familiar with whatever the study of lakes is called, you know that it is very salty when that happens, and this is no exception, just like the Great Salt Lake. So the only thing that lives down there are brine shrimp and alkali flies, which apparently migratory birds just absolutely love. So if you're into bird spotting, you should come out here and check that out whenever they're doing their thing flying through here. And speaking of things flying around, the town of Mariposa, that's actually the Spanish word for butterfly. And it got that name because apparently big flocks of monarch butterflies like to hang out down there during the cooler months. And if this looks a little bit volcanic to you, indeed it is. These two islands were created from an eruption about 350 years ago. And this one actually has a little tiny volcanic peak on it. This one doesn't. This one's pretty flat, but we'll fly right over this one. You get to check that out. Looks pretty cool. Oh, what is that? Looks like a geoglyph. Maybe some of the guys from Nazca came up here. What in the world could that be? It doesn't look like an intentional shape of any kind. Maybe it's from guys driving their Jeeps up the side of it, filming those videos where they roll over and spin the thing all the way back down to the ground. That's interesting, because it doesn't look like a natural feature, but maybe it is. And I also read that the Native Americans out here used to love eating the larvae of the alkali flies, which they would come along the coastline and scoop all those up, which is, gross as that sounds, probably, once you get used to it, quite a delicacy. I almost said delicatessen. Yep, the detailing down here looks pretty good, all things considered, being out in the middle of nowhere. So there's our runway. We're going to come right over here. Give us enough time to come down, and then we'll land right there. And it looks like I've got a 7-knot crosswind, so that'll be fun. That info is coming from Little NavMap. And if you haven't seen it yet, I guess 2 videos ago, I put up a more in-depth tutorial for Little NavMap. And again, there's stuff that's very, very complex and really in-depth out there if you want to know all the ins and outs of it. But that video that I put up was about 17 minutes, just the basics for anyone who's trying to use our flight plans from this channel. And on that note, you should watch that if you're not familiar with how to open up the .rar add-on files, and I think the one for this area is one of those. And so I explain how to do that as well in that video. If you download something that's not a folder that you can drop right in your community folder, that'll help you out with that too. Yeah, this sun setting's nice. Maybe you could have made it a little bit earlier in the day so we could have seen better down in those valleys, but this is a very pretty flight, as I'm sure you'll agree. Alright, I'm coming up on 8,000, so I need to mind that. I'm just surprised there's not more campgrounds or something out here. You'd think there would be, right? Well, without any fishing. All there is to look at is this little island and the airport, I guess. Unless you like fishing for brine shrimp. Alright, once I flatten out, I'll tell you about some upcoming flights that we've got in the hopper. Alright, here's that little volcanic peak. Look at that thing down there. Pretty cool, huh? So I don't know how big the eruption was. Obviously, it wasn't like we saw it in Crater Lake, which blew a gigantic 6-mile-wide hole in the landscape. So this one must have been pretty tame. Alright, we're just under 8,000, which should be just fine. Get my landing lights on. And there aren't any click sounds either when you lower the flaps and the gears, you can hear that, but you can't really tell when you turn lights and things off and on because there's no clicking sounds in here. But again, it's a freeware plane and this guy's first crack at it. And I think they're probably using the default King Air sounds for this, I would guess. Let's move that little pointer out of there. Okay, once we get down to about 150, I'll drop the gears, and then I'll put the RPMs back up, and then I'll tell you about our upcoming flights, the ones that I have planned so far. And as always, of course, if you guys have recommendations, I always check out any recommendation that anyone gives, and I always put priority to stuff that you guys are recommending. So feel free to drop me a line in the comments if you found somewhere that you think is cool and worth checking out. I'll definitely do that. Alright, let's get the gears down. And once we get lined up for a final, I'll start popping the gears out. Alright, so as I'd mentioned before, the Meuse River in Luxembourg is still in the hopper, And I think Luxembourg is a city that they'd recently modified in the sim, and there was plenty of add-ons for that, so that'll be pretty cool if we do that one. I recently took a flight out to Puerto Rico. Alright, let's get the RPMs back up. Because I wanted to check out the Arecibo radio telescope dish, which is that gigantic thing that they built up in the mountains. There was an add-on for that, and it looked cool. And in real life now, it's kind of like Meigs Field in Chicago. It looks terrible now. It's really fallen apart. They're probably taking it apart now because I think they decommissioned it. But it looked really cool in the sim. That big castle down by the port in San Juan looked good. So it was a pretty neat flight. We'll just do a coastal cruise around there. And the town of Ponce, which is on the southern end of the island and where I would have landed, also had a lot of add-ons for that. So San Juan and Ponce were the two big towns that seem to have a lot of add-ons for that. I might do a flight out to Haiti. I've flown out to Port-au-Prince once, and it's neat because it's tucked down between a bunch of really tall mountains. And I'm actually on the board for an orphanage out there in Haiti, so I wanted to fly out there and check out the place where the orphanage is from the air. And obviously nowadays, it's very, very hard to get out there. Very dangerous. And I finally found, someone finally made an add-on pack for Jacksonville, my current hometown of the last 25 years or so. So I added it on. I think they made the add-on pack about 6 months ago. So I put it in there, and we have about 8 bridges downtown, and that's the reason I didn't want to fly out here, because all the bridges look so horrendously bad. And all the bridges except one now look good, and it's one right by downtown, so we may go ahead and do it anyway, because my hunch is that they're not going to do any more add-ons before 2024 for Jacksonville, Florida. But we could take off from St. Augustine, fly up the St. Johns River, which runs all the way north through downtown Jacksonville. We got a couple big military bases out here. Of course, downtown looks neat. Check out the Jaguar Stadium, go along the coast. So we'll probably do that one pretty soon. And I also took a flight out to Vancouver recently, thinking that would look really good, because if you look in the sim, there's all kinds of bookmarks. All right, let's get the flaps down, then we'll start coming down. For landmarks they've got out there, autopilot off. And downtown Vancouver, what I think is downtown, it's kind of like Atlanta. They've got several buildings with a bunch of skyscrapers, but the downtown area looked pretty good. The rest of the heavily populated areas did not. The buildings did not look good at all. I wish they would have just put default buildings in there, but it looks like they tried to do the photogrammetry and they looked very unnatural, which is unfortunate. The bridges look pretty good, and RK Bridger does have a Vancouver pack, so we could get all the bridges cleaned up nice. We may still go out there and do it. I've had a request or two for that part of the world, so we may do it despite the buildings looking a little funny. Alright, this is a really skinny runway. How's my crosswind doing? Okay, no wind now. That's good. So that shouldn't be an issue. And I want my approach speed to be about 100 knots. And the runway's at 6,700, so we're tracking pretty well with that. And I'll cruise down to the end before we look at the satellite map, and I'll show you where the little hangars are, in case you haven't seen that part before. Which we can fly into if we want to, but I would wind up slamming the tail on it, so we won't. We'll park outside of them. And man, when the flaps are all the way down on this thing, they're like vertical, hanging straight down, so it will definitely nose up. I'm applying a lot of forward pressure on the yoke right now. And it does have functional reverse with the thrusters, if you want to use them, thrusters with propellers, I guess. That looks nice, real nice. Very, very nice. I don't recall what it looked like without the add-on, but it's free, so why not? And I think the Yosemite pack for that add-on is fairly large, a couple gigabytes, so just a heads up in that regard. Alright, cut the throttle. Man, if I let go of the yoke, it just noses right up. Alright, let's do this. A little bit of rudder. Come on, baby. Whoa, 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 come on down. There we go. Alright, the flaps up. Nose down. The nose just plummeted as soon as I brought the flaps up. Ooh, we have a little plane out there. What do you got, a little beachy out there? Got a little guy waiting for us. We won't go out there to him. We'll stop by these hangars over here. Alright, I'm just going to bring the prop RPM back down because this thing moves so fast at idle. And we'll check out a little NavMap. Alright. And that, see that button on the left that says Stores Emergency Release? I haven't pushed that yet, but you can push it. I don't know what it does. And some versions of this livery have like missile pods and stuff on them. This must be the surveillance version because I didn't see any of that on here. There's one hangar and then there's another one over there if you want to try to park in it. I'm sure any bush plane would fit fine. This thing will not. Alright, so I'm just going to park next to the old beachy here. Alright. Shut her down, parking brake on. Flaps are all the way up. And I think if I just pull the... Yeah, if I pull the RPM lever all the way back, it shuts it off. Okay, so that's how that works. And of course... And unfortunately, it sounds the same way the windows are open or down. But we need the fresh air out here, so we'll take it. Okay, let's look at a little nav map, see what we got going on here. Alright, so as always, let's check out where in the world we are. So here's San Fran over here, KSFO is over here, and that's about 100 miles right over this direction. And there's the little town of Mariposa. And you can see there is not much else out here. And if you wanted to check it out, there's a big dam out here somewhere. Man, I can't recall where it was. It's somewhere along this river. Oh, there it is right there. See that? I didn't fly over it, so I don't know how it looks in the sim. But that's a pretty good sized dam, and I'll show you another one that's up in the mountains that looks even better than that. And we just cruised up here through the valley. Again, you got to get some altitude quick to get over these things here. So just bear that in mind. You may need to circle out here one time if you're going to do that with a plane that can't climb as fast. And here's Yosemite Valley. So there's El Capitan there. There were some falls that I thought we might be able to see, but I didn't spot any of those, and those are almost impossible to see in the sim. So we can scratch that off. Yosemite Falls there. More falls over here. And I think this was Half Dome, which looked fantastic. I think this might be called Cloud Peak over here. Forgive me if you guys are hikers and you know this stuff better than me. That's a lake that we could see that looked good. And here's where that little river was that was running down through that, and it didn't really look like that in the sim. You could see there was a stream coming down there, but it definitely did not look like that. Cathedral Rock, which was not one of the add-ons. I just bookmarked it in case it was, and you really couldn't. It didn't look like anything special. Here's where those big meadows were, and then here's where the black bears should be. So when you get to this point where you can look down in here, and I don't know where they are because we didn't see any of them, but they're somewhere in this region right here, and that spot right there is where the bookmark in the sim was. So if you're flying lower and slower, that's where to look for them. And now here's the ski resort, June Mountain, and then there's another big one. Look at this one. This thing is huge. Look at that place. Well, I guess that would be the next biggest population center because they definitely have some stuff going on out there, huh? Let's see if we can see that weird feature that was on the side of the mountain over here. I don't recall exactly where that was. Oh well. And then here's Mono Lake in the island. Now the other dam is out here. Let me show you where that is because it looked really cool. Is this it? Yeah, this is it up here. Let's let it depixelate. Look at this place. That's a pretty good sized dam there. Don't know what it looks like in the sim, but if you want to take a little side tour, go check that out. I don't know why little NavMap's taking so long to get its resolution. That's a big dam right there. I wonder how tall that is. Looks like someone's got a little boat parked up at the top of it or something. So anyway, that's it. That's the flight. That's the short hop. So that was pretty cool. If you haven't been out there before, well, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you're going to go out there again, be sure to install that add-on pack. And if you have a slower machine, I read some of the reviews. I've got a 3090, and obviously we didn't have any issues. And I had my graphics settings turned way, way up. My terrain level of detail was 270. And my object level of detail was maxed out. And as you can see, we weren't having any real issues. But some of the reviewers were saying they had some issues once they got down here. So just kind of be mindful of that. You may need to turn some of your settings down. And that's it, guys. Had an absolute blast as always. Learned all kinds of cool things. Got to see a part of the world up nice, close, and personal that I would have never gone out to see before. And I had a really good time. Hope you guys did too. Can't wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.